Hi guys, welcome to the masterclass, and today we'll be discussing time in the market. So what is time in the market, Amanda?
Time in the market is relying on market forces going up over time. So the more time you spend in the market, the more likely you are to ride those long-term trends up
That's
towards
correct.
growth.
That's right. But first up, housekeeping, and who does that best? Amanda.
Currently women. Uh, so housekeeping, just very, very quickly. I'm sure, many of you have been to these masterclasses before, so we'll keep it quick. The advice in this masterclass is general advice. We haven't taken down your individual circumstances. So your broker, your accountant, they know your individual circumstances. If you book a call with us and then we can assess you and provide personalized advice, that's great. But today is general advice because there are many of you that we have to pitch equally to. So the legal disclaimer there, just to show you, is that this presentation is for general informational purposes only. It's up to you to apply what we say today to your goals or your situation. If you want us to guide you on that journey, of course, by all means, give us a call, which you'll have an opportunity to do. And then we can tailor the advice to you specifically. But this, for today, is more of an information gathering exercise.
That's right.
So today, as Dragan said, we're looking at time in the market. So each of our masterclasses, as many of you already know, come in pairs. So one topic versus another. So this is time in the market versus timing the market. So timing the market is like strategically buying before a boom or strategically selling right on a boom. This is where you buy when you can. So timing the market is purchasing when you can afford to buy without worrying too much about booms and busts. You just want to get into the market because you know over the long term it will rise anyway and you don't want to miss the boat waiting for the right timing when you can just spend the time in.
It's more of a long-term strategy. Right?
100%. And for which generally investing is a long-term path to retirement, you want to mitigate your risk of, gambling on market fluctuations and just play the long game.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And like every other time, guys, you've got the QR code or visit propertysessions.com.au/15. Book a call in if you have any questions. I'm happy to assist. Whatever those questions may be, whether it's from this masterclass or you've been planning to purchase your first investment property or many others that you have already. I'm here to help. I'm here to answer questions. Book it in and let's have a chat.
Beautiful.
Now, my background for others who have already seen this, feel free to fast.
Maybe I'll hold off on the dream.
I gathered a lot of knowledge within property investing. I had one of my neighbors where my studio was, who I was renting from. He was a big time property investor. And I gathered a lot of information from him, read a lot of books, did seminars, got into property investing in my early 20s and never looked back since. So right now, 20 something years later, in a decent position, I guess. And, the good thing about it is I'm teaching my kids at a very early age on what to do and not to do, if that makes sense. Over to you, Amanda.
Sure does. Okay, so my background comes not as much from need as Dragon's. My parents were the children of migrants, so for them it was a need. For us, it was more a consolidation of their efforts. So we were raised with very financially literate parents, or parents that became financially literate, and then they wanted to make sure that us kids were financially literate as well. Growing up, I have very fond memories of showing my age here, watching Paul Clitheroe's show Money every week. We used to watch Money, Getaway. What were the shows around? But I don't know, whatever they were. But Money was a big one, and Mum and Dad would always discuss the topics with us afterwards. From a very young age, they were very open with us. We were taught very early on, work hard, save hard, play a little bit, but don't play too hard. Always think of your future, always invest bricks and mortar over stocks. It's what they understood. They still don't understand the share market. They're very much still property. And that was indoctrinated into me from a very young age, and I developed a passion for it. Career-wise, I actually went into teaching. I became an English teacher because, again, my parents were like, property operates on the side of your life. It's not your whole life, so you still pursue a job that you love. and property is something that you do in the background. But then, of course, it became a much bigger passion. So now it's a career. Same as Dragon, it's about teaching the kids as well. I've got 3 of my own. My daughter's almost 7, and if you ask her what she wants to do when she's older, she'll go, I'm going to buy a house when I turn 18, because it's been drummed into her as well.
Yeah.
As much as I fought my parents, I'm doing the same to my kids. And it's not about handouts. There were no handouts for us, and there'll be no handouts for them. It's about building knowledge and confidence to actually take the plunge. And I know and can openly admit that I wouldn't have been brave enough on my own at 21 to take the plunge without that push from a parent. It might have taken me till 31 or 41 because I would have had other priorities, other distractions, and I wouldn't have engaged so heavily on the topic if I hadn't been, can I say, brainwashed?
Yeah.
From 2 months old. Because by the time I got to the age where I could do it, I was so desensitized to the fear of it, it just became something that you do. You know, you finish uni, you get a job. You finish high school, you get a job. It's just the next natural progression. And that's all that I was taught. You finish uni, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. Like, that's not negotiable. Turns out it is negotiable. I just figured that out too late. But that's when it's indoctrinated into you to that degree, you don't think twice, you just do it.
Yeah.
So the head start for me was not a handout head start, it was a mindset head start. And a lot of this is mindset. It's feeling ready to do it. So that's what I'm, doing with my kids, hopefully, getting them to a point where they're ready. So they're in charge of their savings. I'll manage their heads, hopefully get them on track.
So guys, what is the property clock and understanding the market cycle within that? So who to best to explain? Amanda.
Okay, so let's start with the property clock.
Yeah.
Just like any other clock, the property clock cycles around in a fairly predictable fashion, though not always. So we're going to use the property clock just as a guide so that you can see how when people talk about timing the market, this is what they mean, market fluctuations. What's the general progression of those fluctuations? So we start at the peak, which is 12 o'clock. That's the boom market. Prices are at their highest. The market's peaked. FOMO's peaking. Anyone that hasn't purchased is feeling that little bit of anxiety, like, I didn't get on, prices have run away from me, my savings can't keep up. This is where, people that did get on in time go, sweet, how good is this? I've got some mad equity here. Versus the people that missed out going, oh my God, they get the FOMO and they start overpaying because they want to jump on.
Yep.
So peak prices, boom. So when the boom cools off, the fear of missing out is replaced with a fear of overpaying. So buyers hesitate. They realize that the market's overcooked. They don't want to overpay. So they pull back. And we have what's called the start of the decline. So that's 1, 2 o'clock into 3 o'clock, declining market. So prices pull back. What tends to happen is properties sit on the market longer than usual because vendors still want their top dollar. They've just missed the peak, but they're still chasing that top dollar. You have a bigger gap to the buyers who are scared to pay it. So you've got this gap between what vendors expect for their property and what a buyer is prepared to pay. So the market declines because the longer a property is on the market, the more fatigued the vendor gets, the more purchasing power the buyer has, or more bargaining power the buyer has. So you start to get this decline, nearing the bottom, down to the bottom of the market. So that's where we find a floor. Basically, the floor or the bottom is the lowest price a vendor will take for their property before they decide to just hold on to it. Okay, so how much of a loss on paper are they willing to take from the peak to the bottom before going, you know what, I don't need to sell, I'll wait it out. Okay, so there's your floor. Once we find the floor, that equilibrium, once we find the floor, then and only then does the market start to recover. So from 6 till 9 is your recovery. And then from there, it picks up momentum because once people see that recovery, all those vendors that were waiting it out go, okay, I can sell now. Prices are coming back up. Buyers start to get a little bit anxious. Oh, the market's moving. My savings aren't going to keep up. I better buy. So buyers start to hit, and then that momentum zooms us around back up to the peak to another boom. Now, the property clock doesn't move in an equal fashion. So from peak to bottom, it might be 3, 4, 5 years, but from bottom back to peak, it might be 10 years. It might be 2 years. It's not predictable, the pacing. The only thing that is predictable is the sequencing, not the pacing. It doesn't move equally. It moves in that order, but not at equal pace all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So,
risks.
Yes, we said earlier, don't get enchanted by this strategy. It is very risky. It is, in many senses, a form of gambling because you're managing your timing based on market fluctuations, which are live and unpredictable. So we don't have to look too far back in history to see where this plan can fail. Let's look at Sydney. Well, I suppose this is reflected in the broader market, but we'll focus on Sydney. So 2013 to 2016, we had that rising market and the big boom 2016, 2017. 2017, it started to cool off, and then 2019, we hit the bottom where properties were harder to sell. The listings sort of stayed live a bit longer. 2019, if you bought in 2019, you bought at the bottom. 2020 was when there was supposed to be a nice, slow, gentle, normal recovery that would have taken a couple of years. So 2020 to 2024, we would have had that 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock on the property clock. And then we probably would have been in boom times around now. Okay, if the property had been left to its natural devices, because booms are about 10 years apart, give or take 7 to 10 years apart. So we would have been due for a boom now. However, the boom came 3 years early thanks to COVID. So the property clock was at the bottom at 2019 and then it spread around really quickly to the top. So there was probably an 18-month window instead of a 5-year window. So anyone that was trying to time the market who thought they had more time suddenly didn't because they were waiting. Whereas the people that jumped in 2019, they didn't care if it was the bottom. They just dived in, went for it, and they were the winners. So sometimes trying to be clever can backfire, and you've got to be prepared for that backfire, because if you miss that boat, you've missed that boat. So I'm personally an advocate of buy when you can. And if you look at the twin masterclass to this, time in the market as opposed to timing the market, you'll see why I'm such an advocate for that strategy over this strategy. But that's a really good example there of missing the boat because of an external force. So in the case of COVID, the reason for that was the government kept pumping money into the economy by way of stimulus, the JobKeeper and JobSeek, all the rest of it. All that money being pumped into the economy, it swells around. But what happens is money gets taken out of the economy and added to people's savings. So the amount of money in circulation decreases as people start to hoard it as part of their savings. What do people do with their savings? They buy property. What happens when heaps of people buy property at the same time?
Prices go up.
Prices go up.
Yep.
So it's very easy to see when you see the government injecting money into the economy, it lands in property. So they say money dies in property because that's when it gets taken out of circulation.
Yep.
So when you see money being pumped into the economy, forget the property clock, buy before the results of that stimulus are seen.
Yep.
So that's the biggest risk, where the clock speeds up or slows down unexpectedly. So the opposite of that would be you've done all your heavy buying, but then the market is stagnant for another 5 years. So you've got to tread that water for 5 years before the boom, especially if you've purchased on the belief and you've over leveraged on the belief that a boom is imminent. If that boom is not imminent and you've over leveraged, you will have cash flow issues until that boom hits. And it will hit eventually, but the time that you anticipated managing those holding costs might blow out. So it's a very risky strategy. A lot of investors use it successfully because they might have done it enough times or have a good enough gut feeling to read the market. It also requires you to watch the market on a daily basis. It's not a passive process. It's a very active process, as opposed to just buying when you can and trusting that the long-term market movements will always go up. So do we recommend this strategy? Yes and no. It's something to be mindful of when you purchase.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone, and there's a lot of risk and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, again, labor-intensive, time-consuming due diligence that needs to be done when the market's going to go up in the long term anyway.
Yep, definitely. So time in the market has one secret.
Just one.
Just one.
Buy at any time as long as you buy well.
Yep.
So if you are not considering the market movements in your purchasing, if you are purchasing in a hot market or a cold market, you need to at least be purchasing well to mitigate against those market movements. So you've got to be careful that you don't succumb to FOMO. When everybody else is piling in, buying and paying too much, don't be one of them. Be someone that's smart enough to go, unless there is an absolute bargain here, I'm not going to purchase. Same thing getting caught by trying to catch a falling knife. If the market is falling, everyone tries to find the bottom and buy before the bottom. If the market upticks a little bit and you buy on that uptick, that's okay. Even though you paid a little bit more than the bottom, at least you know the recovery has begun. So little things like that, just being really careful of either the FOMO or trying to catch a falling knife. As much as we're saying buy when you can, don't do it recklessly.
Yep.
If others are fearful, again, don't listen to the noise. When markets are at their lowest, that's when fear is at its highest. So you might hear from other people, oh, now is a silly time to buy, or there's a big correction coming, or don't buy now. That would be, whatever. People will say all sorts of things to influence you or scare you or give you reason to pause. Try not to buy into that. Don't listen to the noise. Just if you buy when you can, you mitigate against the risk of the market moving and outstripping your capacity to save. You don't want to miss the boat. So the rationale behind this is if you're in for the long haul anyway, and the market is going to go up in the long term anyway, buy when you can so you don't miss out. To do that, you need to understand value because you don't ever want to overpay. Regardless of where the market is at in its little cycle, you don't want to overpay regardless. Even if there's a boom coming, it doesn't mean that you can overpay into the boom. You still want to buy well at a good price. So with that said, purchase price matters less than holding costs. So if you did overpay a little bit, or if the market does dip a little bit after you purchase, if prices drop 10% as an example, you don't lose 10% of your property. They don't come and cordon off, a bedroom and go, well, you can't use that 10% of the house because you paid too much. Once you own it, the purchase price is no longer relevant. The only thing that becomes relevant after that point is your repayments, your holding costs in relation to your rent and, however else you mitigate that. So your holding costs are what matters. So if the market goes up, down, or sideways, as long as you can hold that property through any market, you'll get the growth in the long term. So even if you overpay, it's not the end of the world. Don't panic sell. You just got to be able to hold.
Yep.
All right. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, that's
all good.
Covered it.
All right. So therefore, what is the real cost of this strategy? There might be a little bit of overpaying, a little bit of, non-optimal timing, but what is the real cost? The cost of inaction versus the cost of overpaying slightly or the market dipping right after you purchase. If you scare yourself by listening to all of that noise into buying nothing at all, what happens? The market keeps moving and you keep missing out. So if you don't purchase anything because you've listened to the noise, your deposit is there, but the market outstrips that deposit and that deposit is no longer sufficient for purchasing. We all have that one friend, and every time I say this, it kills me not to be able to name him, but you know who you are if you're watching. We all have that one friend that was ready to buy 10 years ago. For some reason, excuses, timing, distractions, whatever, they didn't purchase. Where are they now? Still wishing they had purchased 10 years ago or complaining about how hard it is to purchase today. Compared to if you did jump in and buy something, but maybe you paid a little bit too much or maybe the market dipped after you purchased, but the same 10 years have passed. 10 years ago to now, if you paid 30 grand too much, do you think you give a toss about that 30 grand now 10 years later? Or would you rather be the first guy that didn't buy? So it's what is the real cost? Is it getting the timing absolutely perfect or being a little bit more flexible on the timing or even, the market moves or you overpay a little bit, but you're in? So if it's one or the other, the cost of inaction versus the cost of overpaying, over 10 years, only one of those costs will dilute out. The cost of overpaying will dilute out over the 10 years. The cost of inaction compounds over the 10 years. Massive, massive opportunity cost. So as much as you might want to play timings on the market, buy before a boom or whatever, if you are in a position to buy, always make sure you have a horse in the race and you buy something. So if we have a look there, why is time in the market the safest method? There's an image there that sort of shows the bull and the bear markets, the bits where the market doesn't grow or it stagnates, or the bits where it shoots up. Again, it's very cyclical. We have periods of growth. We have periods of stagnation. We don't know what the future holds. We can stand here and go, well, the past is a good indication of the future. Yes, to a degree. The cycles are a good indication of the future. Yes, to a degree. Does the clock keep running around, ongoing forever? Yeah, probably. But at the end of the day, nobody has a crystal ball, as COVID proved to us. So buying when you can and trusting the long-term trajectory is always better than trying to gamble in the short term.
That's right.
So when do you use this method? If you're looking for cash flow, this is a good method to use because, like I said, as soon as you purchase, the purchase price no longer matters. It's about the cash flow. If you're looking for equity, then the equity comes from the strategic purchasing as opposed to the timing of the purchase. If you're buying good quality stock at nicely discounted prices, maybe with the help of someone that knows what they're doing, then you can again manage your risk. Even if you buy in a market that is heating up, you can still find bargains in those markets. Or at the end of the day, if your savings are at a point where you are ready to buy now and you do overpay a little bit, in the long run, it's okay. So market influence becomes a game of luck. Because we can't control it, we won't try to control it if this is the strategy that you choose. If you're looking for ongoing cash flow, market fluctuations have no influence on your cash flow. Whether that property is worth more or less, unless the rental income changes, there's no impact to you. You've already got the loan on that property. You've already got your tenants. What it's worth is just noise because you've already purchased and you're not selling. So it doesn't matter. It's really easy to let your head run away with that and go, oh, I paid $50,000 too much. Maybe, but it's no longer relevant because the purchase and the transaction is completed. So try not to get yourself caught up in regret or overthinking or overanalysis because at the end of the day, in the long run, and if you let enough time pass and you don't freak yourself out and panic sell, if you let the time pass,
You'll always win.
you will always win in property.
That's right.
Yeah.
And guys, again, feel free to scan this QR code for a 15-minute strategy session with myself. If you have any questions, happy to answer that. There's no charge to this, so use this opportunity to answer any questions one-on-one. If it's not through the QR code, please visit propertysessions.com.au/15 and book yourself in that way. And again, thanks for watching this masterclass. Thank you, Amanda, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.